Amy, my friend, you got the floor.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having us here. This is a first go round with this, so we appreciate your patience and your feedback is really, really valuable. So I've left my business cards there. If you wouldn't mind, shoot me an email and let's keep a connection going. But I would love to hear your feedback, how it impacted you, if it impacted you, what you would like to hear more about, what you would like to hear less of, to be honest. So I need your help to continue to build this into a bigger and better thing, because we're always growing, right? So I am 36 years old. I am from Butler County, grew up in Trenton, Ohio, dropped out of Edgewood High School, got my GED when I was 16. And so that kind of led me into a whole different life than what anybody really had planned for me. So early on, I was diagnosed with some pretty severe mental health stuff. It was borderline personality disorder, which really puts a person into a difficult place to find stability in their life. And that was a large contribution of what my future looked like. So by age 14, I had the first of 7 knee surgeries from sports-related injuries. I have 0 cartilage in my knees. I don't even know how I'm standing right now, but you know, as long as I don't squat, I'm okay. You know, it was a lot of different things that impacted what my future looked like. So by the time I was 21 years old, I had given birth to my oldest child. And by the time I was 22, I had signed my rights away to her for my parents to raise. She's 15 years old today. When I was late in my 20s, and throughout all my 20s, lots of partying, lots of excessive drinking, lots of just abusive relationship after abusive relationship, just a lot of instability going with the substance use, but also with that untreated mental health stuff too. So it often goes hand in hand, as we all know. And so in my late 20s, I injured my back, and that increased my opiate use, but it increased my doctor shopping much more, my drug-seeking behavior that much more. And then I ultimately landed in a pill mill doctor's office right here in Hamilton back in '09 and was prescribed Opana for the first time. 6 weeks later, I would try heroin, and when I tried heroin for the first time, it was with a dirty needle because it had just gotten to that place. So by the time I was 30 years old, I had lived such a unstable life of homelessness. I had alienated myself from my family, which might have, you know, been best for them at times too, and a lot of healthy boundaries had to be in place by them for sure. But by the time I was 30 years old, I had overdosed, and I was revived by Narcan. So when I overdosed, my body was pushed out of a vehicle and left for dead on a parking lot in Indianapolis. And when I was revived, I refused treatment. I wasn't violent or combative. I wasn't pissed off. I was kind of sad that I was still alive. But I was at the same time just really just scared and confused, and I needed to process it because not only did I just survive an overdose, but the people I was with pushed my body out of a car. And the people I was with, they shouldn't have been the ones to push my body out of the car. They were some of the people that I trusted more than anyone. So it started to make me reevaluate and reconsider what the value was of my life. Who was I? What was I going to do? Was I really going to just continue this cycle? Or was I just going to kill myself and get it over with? Because clearly that wasn't working very well. I had tried over and over and over to commit suicide. I have scars from here to here of times that I just wanted to hurt myself because I didn't know how else to punish myself, you know? And so over the following weeks, I started to decide what I wanted out of life, and what I wanted wasn't what I had been giving myself. And so when it was time for me to get some help, I had no insurance, I had no transportation, I lived in an unsafe environment, And so what's a person to do when every barrier and every odd is stacked against us? And so there's a window of opportunity, as we know, and my window of opportunity always happened when I would be in withdrawal. That would be the time where I would think, okay, I need to get some help. I can't deal with this anymore. But then those barriers would pop up over and over. And this was back in 2012, so it was some time ago still yet. But where did I go when I was ready? I went to the nearest emergency department. And I got lucky because that emergency department had a dual diagnosis psychiatric unit. So I was admitted onto the unit, but because I refused to admit that I was a heroin addict in withdrawal from heroin, the nursing staff wouldn't give me any medication, compassion, dignity for 2 days. For 2 days, they put me on a gurney in front of the nurses' station. And again, I'm a polite person. I was polite even at my worst. You know, I'm not a mean-hearted, rude person. So I was always respectful and treated everybody decent. But I wasn't being treated decent for sure. So finally, 2 days in, at the hospital, 4 days worth of withdrawal for me, I finally said, okay, I'm in withdrawal from heroin. Can you help me? I didn't know what Suboxone was. I didn't know what buprenorphine was. I'd never had that. They immediately put in the process for me to see the doctor, and maybe they already had it just written up and waiting for me. I can't remember, but very quickly I was given buprenorphine. Very quickly my withdrawal symptoms went away. That was March 9-ish, 2012. When I was released, I didn't have insurance, so I knew I wasn't going to be able to pay for ongoing treatment or ongoing medication, so I had them taper me down, and when I was released, I had 0 withdrawal, and I continued that recovery process from there on out. I say that quitting heroin was the easy part. I had no continued care, no follow-up therapy, no continued medication. I was in an abusive environment. And finally, what got me out was that I was ultimately stabbed by my ex-husband. And so I was finally able to get away from Indianapolis, get back to Ohio, get back to Middletown, right where it all started, right where all my connections were, right? That didn't matter because I was focused, I was driven, I made a decision that I was done suffering. I was done putting myself through all of that. My mom wouldn't talk to me. I had, remember, a child my parents were raising, and I hadn't talked to her in a year. Later, I found out she didn't even know I was her biological mother until she was 10 years old. I didn't know that. I would bounce in and out from time to time, or holidays and things, or out of guilt would call and couldn't carry on a 3-minute conversation because it was so emotional for me. Still is. So when I came back to Ohio, I fell in love with someone. I was reaching a year of being in recovery, of not using anything, and then finally got past 1 year, and there was a domestic disturbance right next door to our apartment, and Middletown police came. Well, I had been on the run for a few years from several felony warrants. So I was arrested and preparing to go to prison for 5 to 10 years. Felony burglary, theft, breaking and entering, receiving stolen property. And when I got into the jail, and I don't want to make this a religious thing, but this is part of my story, I was an atheist my whole life. And when I got into that jail and I was preparing for what was getting ready to happen, I was desperate, and I opened a Bible, and it turned to Proverbs 31:25. And if you know that, then you know how meaningful that is. So I went to court 2 days later. Every felony was dropped down to 2 misdemeanors, an attempted petty theft and attempted conspiracy to petty theft. And that was 2 different cases that they worked with me on. And I walked out that day. And that was that pivotal moment of my life where I could say, okay, now I have a chance. I don't have a felony now. I've been clean for a while. All right. I don't have to look over my shoulder all the time. I still kind of freak out when a cop gets behind me though. I think I always will. It's probably healthy that I do that.
I think we all do.
Oh, good.
You're not alone.
Good. I wonder if cops do that. You know? If you could hit the next slide. So I had to reinvent myself completely. And when I said quitting heroin was the easy part, it really truly was the easy part. So I had to change how I perceived things, how I reacted and responded to things. I used to be like a ratchet, just angry, want to fight everybody, drama queen all the time. And I had to change all of that because that's not how we function in society. Someone once told me. And instead of lying about everything constantly, because those were the behaviors that I had developed due to that lifestyle, due to the mental health, due to everything that I had gone through for so many years. So I started telling the truth, whether you wanted to hear it or not. Hey, at least I was honest. My mother really loves that. But I had to clean up that wreckage over the 20 years that I'd spent just mowing everything down that I came in contact with. So life in recovery, 6 years, 6.5 years now. March 9 is my annual anniversary. And actually this Friday I'll have 1 year that I quit smoking cigarettes. Big day for that one. And that was difficult. It was easier than heroin. But what I do is I stick to a daily routine. I wake up at 5 a.m. every day without an alarm. I pray, I meditate. I take that quiet time and I write and I work and I focus on me and I focus on what I need and I focus on all of those things that I did in the beginning that helped me figure out what I needed so that I could maintain the recovery. I suffered from anxiety really, really badly for 20 years and so badly that I was awarded disability for that. And when in 2014, when I started to reinvent myself, I started doing yoga and meditation, and I haven't had an ounce of anxiety in over 4 years. But it was because I was doing all of that work with myself. The drugs, that was the easy part. It was everything I had to unlearn and then teach myself new ways to deal with life without needing to escape, right? And just real quick, it took me about 6 months to stop craving opiates specifically. It took me about 2 years to stop craving anything to use to escape, or the need to escape, the need to not deal with life without drinking beer or wine or whatever it is. That's hard to do, and it's a marathon. Clearly, I don't run marathons. But I value the bad days because I'm alive. I'm alive to have bad days. And my worst days now are a walk in the park compared to my worst days 10 years ago. No comparison. So I practice self-care. When I need a break, I take a break. Say it with me. When I need a break, I take a break.
Her self-care
Yes.
isn't just about her,
No.
right? Self-care,
Yes.
right? Yeah.
I do my best to have self-awareness. So I have I just got this a couple weeks ago. This is my check yourself list. These are all of the things that are important to me. These are the things that are my values and my virtues and what matter to me and what keep me who I am today. And they're also covering up some really gnarly scars. But I always find the silver lining, and I always choose to be happy. That's not always easy. So my ED visit's an active addiction, and if you take a look, you'll see, obvious drug-seeking behavior, lying about ailments or injuries, or my favorite trick was I would poke myself with a needle in my finger, drop blood in my urine, and magically I would convince everybody that I had kidney stones. And it worked every time. Just saying. Everyone looks astonished right now. I did not expect that reaction. So I would lie about things to that extent. I would even look in sharps containers. If I could get my little hand inside, it didn't matter. If I thought I could get something, I would. And so I would be given narcotics easily, often, more than, and this is just my own real rough estimate, 200 ED visits in 10 years. And I bet it's a very low and underestimate, to be honest with you. And I would either be given narcotics and sent away, or just given nothing at all and then sent away. But I was never confronted. No one ever looked at me and said, Amy, I see what's going on with you. I've seen your tox screens, all of your x-rays and CAT scans, everything looks fine, but I see your arms and I see what's going on with you. And I think we should talk about your substance use disorder. And it's just some compassion. No one ever took that time with me and said, I can see through your bullshit. But let's get real and let's talk about it, because until we talk about it, nothing's doing anything. I was 2 years in recovery getting my CDCA before I finally was like, oh my God, I'm an addict. Oh my God, like I'm not kidding you. I am not kidding you. I did not believe it. I didn't accept it. And let me tell you, believing and accepting something are two very different things that can happen over a course of 10 years. But I didn't believe it. So if I didn't accept it or believe it, it's going to be really difficult unless someone else points that out to me. I need you to point that out to me to help me help myself. So today, I have Crohn's disease, I have peripheral nerve disease, and so no medication, no regular doctor's visits, but every now and then things happen and we have to go to the ED. So in the last 5 years, I averaged 5 ED visits in 5 years. But what happens now when I go in is immediately I say, I am in recovery. I'm in long-term recovery from substance use disorder. Please do not offer me medication with narcotics. Please don't ask me about my pain. I'm good. I don't need it. And it goes well, but then 20 minutes later, someone comes in and offers me morphine. And this happens repeatedly, all the time. So that's difficult, you know? And so what usually happens is I will take that moment to educate and say, listen, this is why I'm telling you, please stop offering me medication. I'm not gonna take it, you're not triggering me, but what if you were, right? So, and that's when I go into telling them about what I've experienced, where I am at today, what my life is like today, and it usually becomes like 5 nurses are in my room and it's story time. And it's a beautiful experience, but look at everything that had to happen to lead up to that experience. It's a long time. So today my business is recovery. I am a professional quitter. And in 2014, I obtained my first certification as a CDCA 1, and then holding a CDCA 2, which isn't much in comparison to a BSN, but it's a whole lot for an awkward redhead girl from Trenton who has a GED from Edgewood. So it's a certified chemical dependency counselor assistant. Yes. And so then I'm also a certified peer recovery supporter. And to be a peer recovery supporter, it is required that you are in recovery from either or both substance use disorder and or mental health. And I happen to nail both of them, so I'm golden for that. I'm also a community outreach manager for Brightview, and I'm their founding peer recovery supporter at Brightview. So they created that role for me at Brightview. They allowed me to develop the program that we use in the clinical spaces. And now I'm in the process of developing that role on the external side in the community outreach, and you are all my guinea pigs. But I'm also a public speaker. I am able to go around and share my story just like this and educate people and humanize things, you know. And then fortunately, I've appeared in several documentaries, and then in the first quarter of 2019, watch A&E for a new series, Addiction Unplugged, and I will be on that one too. That's very exciting. I've got a book coming out in spring. Lots of really cool stuff happening. It's incredible what my life is like today and all of the hard work that has had to be put into that. And so peer recovery support, as you see, research has shown that peer support facilitates recovery and reduces healthcare costs. And so by having a peer supporter, either on your team or in your healthcare space that is able to walk into a room and sit with someone and say, I get it, I've been there. As soon as you put that in your mouth, I did that, didn't you? But I get it, and I understand. Let's me and you talk, and then we'll catch up with the nurses here shortly, and we'll see if we can put together a plan, right? But it's by saying, I've been there, I get it, and I'm gonna encourage some hope, and maybe, hopefully inspire some change. So, the reason we're all here, compassion fatigue. So how are we able to identify compassion fatigue? Chronic exhaustion, whether it's emotional or physical or both. Reduced feelings of sympathy or empathy. Dreading working for or taking care of another and feeling guilty about it. Feelings of inability, anger, or anxiety. Depersonalization, and sometimes that can be a coping skill at the same time, so it's hard to separate from those gray areas. Hypersensitivity, impaired decision making, poor work-life balance is a huge one, because when we're driving home from work, how many of us take off our healthcare worker hat or our director hat or whatever we do hat to put on our mom hat or our wife hat or our dad hat, right? It's a very difficult thing to separate, and sometimes it all goes together, and that can be really unhealthy, not just for us, but for the people that we're taking care of. And then you have the diminished sense of career fulfillment, and that sucks. So tips to reverse compassion fatigue is to get educated like we are today. So it's always important to get a different perspective and to have that insight. Practicing self-care, and that means doing something selfish for you without your kids, without your spouse, or with them. I mean, I like my husband, so that's cool, you know, but something for you that's not going to benefit everybody else, but in secret it actually does benefit everybody else. You want to engage in hobbies outside of your profession, and whatever that might look like, but it's extremely important to be able to separate that. Setting emotional boundaries. Being able to recognize if this is an emotional trigger for you at any point. Keeping a journal, cultivating healthy relationships outside of work, seeking personal therapy, which is really difficult to do as well. It's something I should probably do. I don't have time. What would it look like if I was to get therapy because I'm all healed and cured now? Will my husband resent me if I'm taking more time to take care of myself and all of that self-care? But it's important, because if we're not taking care of ourselves, we're not taking care of anyone else. And then seeking holistic perspective. And again, that's what we're doing today. So I encourage all of you to have a workplace strategy, and we can certainly help you with that throughout our continued time together. Hold each other accountable. If you see that one of us is just kind of being crabby, or we could be a lot more compassionate, or we could show more empathy, or maybe we're just being really inappropriate and rude, hold each other accountable in a positive, constructive way, and decide that amongst yourselves. But support groups and open discussions, regular breaks, routine check-ins. How are you feeling? Identifying your emotions. Are you pissed off? Are you upset? Are you sad? Put a name to it. Mental health days. We all need those. Speak with a peer recovery support specialist. My business card is on the table. I have more if you need them. Call me, text me, email me. Whatever you need. Facebook me. Relaxation rooms, massages, meditation classes. I can show you how to do a 5x5. It can change your life. Resources to maintain that healthy work and home balance. So we need you to help us help ourselves. And again, I wasn't able to accept that I have this disease until I was 2 years into recovery. I was ashamed to talk about it. I was ashamed. I didn't want to admit it to myself. I didn't know how to break the cycle, but I knew where to go when I was ready. I went to the hospital. Most people know we can go to the hospital or we can go to the fire department. If I go to the fire department, there's a greater chance that cops are going to be there. So I'm going to go to the hospital. Slide, please, Joy. Thank you. And so that's what's so important is knowing that I'm not able to help myself or to even understand what's going on with me. My symptoms might be completely different than what's actually going on, but I need you guys to help me help myself. So whenever you get a chance, take a look again at the photos back there, because those are people that love me, that never gave up on me 100%. They had to love me from a distance for a while. They never gave up on me. And again, every single photo there except for one is me today in recovery. So I invite you to ask me any questions that you like when we're done, or email anything that you need. I'm here for you. I'm here to help you maintain that positive perspective, and so that we're just able to help other people. That's the whole point of this. So I'm going to turn it over to Miss Joan.
Well, I don't know. That's pretty amazing, isn't it? So I really kind of want to reflect on that. I mean, this is amazing.